Well, thank you all for staying with us after 2 intensive days of great information on a number of policies, innovations, financing, the 3 themes of this symposium. And in the last segment, and I know this is in between you and your flight or your destination for your weekend, please bear with us because we have some very exciting announcements to make. And I would first like to invite Mr. Hachimi Kenu, the Deputy Director or Executive of the Mediterranean de l'Eau and Honorary Governor of the World Water Council, to make a very exciting announcement.
Thank you. Thanks, Sasha, for your invitation first to participate in this international symposium. Initiated in Cairo Water Week by Loïc Fauchon, the President of the World Water Council. This is a new initiative coordinated by the World Water Council. And now I am convinced, after these 2 days, I listen the several presentations, and the last session is, for me, very, very interesting result. This is a new initiative launched by the World Water Council concern the International Observatory for Non-Conventional and Energy Resource, with a focus for the renewable energy. It is very, very important this, after now 23 years exercise in the World Water Council, I think is very now the moment will be coordinate and will put is clearly the non-conventional water in the realist position in IWRM. It's very, very important now will be understand the non-conventional resource, the reuse, the desalination principally, will be to include for each projection, for each planification by country for the use, for the management of the resource of water. It's clear now this is initiative not to duplicate any other international or mondial observatory, but will be use the all result now we have with the member of the World Water Council will budget with one hardcore with several governors. It's here now. Will be elaborated. This is initiative step by step is clear, and to convince one multi-stakeholders approach to behave based in the indicator, specific indicator, will be push the use of the non-conventional water combined with the energy. If I understand, is clearly now, this is a new nexus, is clearly, but I prefer probably alliance, is clearly water, energy, food security, and automatically health, and education. Is clear now, is very important, will be convince every state of actors of involved in the water sector will be pushed. This is non-conventional water in real position for the all planification. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kenu. We look very excited, look forward to this International Observatory for non-conventional water on reuse as well as energy. Next, I'd like to present the youth group. And FAO, we have not only recognition of women, but also youth and in continuing a lot of the efforts in agriculture. So I would like to invite Mr. Vincent Lawson-Body from the UN Major Group for Youth and Children.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my name is Vincent Lawson-Body, and I'm speaking on behalf of the United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth. We are the formal engagement mechanism for young people to engage in UN processes. On behalf of the United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth, and of my colleagues here, Domenico from Italy, Hans from USA, and Kevin from Kenya, we would like to thanks the FAO and the government of Spain for organizing this international symposium and for inviting us to participate in this discussion. These 2 days were a great opportunity of learning and discussion about the important topic of non-conventional waters. Currently, 70% of the world's poorest population is living in rural areas and depend on agriculture for this living, among them a lot of children and young people. A sustainable use of non-conventional waters represents a major opportunity to address the water scarcity in agriculture and in a virtuous circle to create jobs for farmers in rural areas, often forced to leave their community for the cities, to reduce poverty and hunger, and increase the health of millions of people, including adults and children, and save many lives. In the past days, we learned the state of the art of various technologies, passing from reclaimed water, desalination, fog, rainwater harvesting, iceberg, seawater, and a lot more. In order to make the use of this technology sustainable, strategies should support research and development program for innovation on low-cost green energies to promote the collaboration between private sector and academia, and support policy contributing to close the gap between farmers and technology. It was highlighted that in order to be fully efficient, trustworthy, and sustainable, the use of non-conventional waters requires more than considering the engineering issues. The strategies should be adapted to the local context, should take into account the local specificities, not always use the elephant technology, but also use more local technology, natural-based technology, and decentralized technology. More broadly, the use of an adapted and harmonized legal framework is useful and should be used, and all policy should be included mechanism and policy contributing to achieve the gender equality, to protect biodiversity and decent working conditions, to improve the city's sustainability and reduce the waste of food. Water is also climate. We are deeply convinced that water is the principal medium through which climate change impacts the environmental, social, economic conditions. Water and agriculture have a pivotal position to achieving all the problems related to hunger, poverty, health, education, gender equality, climate change, security, peace. There is a strong interconnection and interaction between SDGs, and we can no longer intend to resolve problems separately. Synergies between policies are keys to achieving the entire set of SDGs, and the consideration of one regime by the others has become essential. We are sure that the messages of this symposium will be nourish the discussion at the upcoming UNFCCC COP25 that will be held in Madrid. Finally, the food security of tomorrow's generations depends on the current sustainable practices and behaviors of the current generations. The international community has consistently emphasized the fact that the world will be not in a position to achieve the SDGs without the participation of young people. Today, the world population between 5 and 25 years old is 2 billion. Youth, as innovators, entrepreneurs, consumers, producers, or ordinary citizens, will play a major role in addressing all the problems of the current world and hunger. Already, young people, young men and women all around the world are using their skills, awareness, and resilient capacities to design sustainable solutions for agriculture. Their local climate change resilient initiatives are contributing to promote good behaviors, raise awareness, create jobs, impulse innovation able to reduce pollution, collect data, facilitate the exchange of information, and close the gap between farmers and technology. The solution to any problem depends on how the problem is understood in the first place. We are all a part of the solution. There is probably no single perfect solution, but nothing prevents us from working together to find the best. Transparent and inclusive institutions at all levels are necessary in order to enable the participation of all stakeholders, to improve our understanding of the problem and increase our mutual efficiency. Youth participation in implementation and monitoring institutions should be the rule, not the exception. In the agricultural sector and beyond, it's necessary for youth to be effectively supported, to be effectively empowered, in order to turn into achievements the hope it brings and the hope it has concerning a sustainable world. In order also to become an agent of change, to express its full potential, to be the builder and leader of his own destiny, and to contribute to achieve our common goal, to leave no one behind. We would like to thank FAO and the government of Spain, and all of you. Let us together work across generations and countries, transform the sustainable use of non-conventional water in the new conventionals for people, peace, and the planet. Thank you.
Thank you. And youth will be very important in our activities in accelerating, scaling up the non-conventional resources. And then I'd like to invite our summary note takers. I know there are many participants in the room who helped us gather these messages, but I'd like to invite the rapporteurs for day 1 and day 2 to wrap up some of the key issues for you. So first, for day 1, I'd like to invite my colleague and also senior officer of FAO, Marlos de Souza.
Thank you, Stasha. And first of all, I would like to thank you, the government of Spain, for supporting our UN water meeting that happened the day before our symposium here. So I'm saying that because usually you don't see, or you see those connections, but not as strong as what we saw having our UN water meeting related to non-conventional water. And then after having this 2-day symposium here, and especially seeing the keynote speaker, his message to get through as a kind of a linkage between what we discussed the day before and the 2 days of discussions here. So coming from what Professor Kala told us during his keynote speech here, so I think some important points that we saw during the first day of discussions here. One is changing our perspective to do things in a different way, and especially what we are calling now the one water. So as a hydrologist by training, it's good to see that now we are going back in history to do what hydrologists have been doing for many, many years, is to use this hydrological cycle as the basis for us to do water management. And getting non-conventional water is one way of doing that, is water. Can be of a lower water quality, but is water. So seeing it as water, not as waste, I think is going to really change the perspective. So I think it was a very important point to have this one water to change this perspective to a water cycle perspective. And in his speech, he put us back to talk about back to watershed level, system of the systems. And yes, where you should be doing our water management is at a watershed level. And then moving from less waste and more resource, getting into the business model that I think is what we have been discussing here, circular economy. How to get it to be part of circular economy and really to put the waste or the word waste out of this equation and use as a resource. If you see it as a resource, then we have a different perspective of treating it or reusing it, which is more important. So then he came up with accelerating the diffusion of innovation. And at the end, he was talking about unbundle the technologies. And a lot of people here, they used examples of the elephant in the room and always referring to the elephant and things. And then you go back to the sessions. So when you go to the sessions, we discussed it. You know, most of the sanitation engineers, when they were doing their course, so they were, in their universities, for them was, you have to treat the water, the wastewater, to the level that we don't have nutrients anymore. Nowadays, you are asking them to leave the nutrients there, so they have to go back and to study it again. Have had to leave the nutrients in the water to be reused by farmers, for example. But from our first session, so some of the key messages, they were relevance of international cooperation in water management. So new tools and methodologies are needed to promote water reuse. A new international regulation on water reuse is required. Maybe I think it's more about at country level. So different countries, they have different policies in place. Some of them, they are working well. Some others, they don't have anything. Promotion of scientific research in water reuse from universities and technological centers. So I just gave you an example. So before was treat everything, don't leave anything in there. Now, no, don't treat everything, leave the nutrients in the water. So moving to the session 2, then we went to some other perspectives. For example, change perceptions about the utility of treated and untreated wastewater for irrigation. So I think it goes to what Professor Kala said in terms of having a business model for what we need the water for. So we don't need to treat to Class A water, for example, to use it for wood production, for forest, for example. So adoption of modeling techniques to evaluate designs of treatment facilities and for what you need the water for. And assessment of water quality criteria, potential environmental impacts, and legal issues that need to be resolved to foster best and legal use of unconventional water resources. So then moving to our parallel sessions, then we had 2. One was about desalination. The other one was about treated or reuse of recycled water. So for the desalination, it was good to see that a lot of the myths we know about, or we knew before about desalinated water, we discussed and put them apart to say that we cannot use it because it's too expensive to be used for agriculture. And so we discussed a lot about the current cost of desalinating water, the energy use for doing that with the new technologies we have, the environmental impacts that before we thought that was big impact for the outflows, for example, for the marine life. And then in Australia, from some pictures of the desalination plants we have in there, then you see that they have more fish now and they have a problem with bringing fish that they were not there before. So they're coming to live in those places. So, and about the chemicals that before we used to say that, yeah, you need a lot of chemicals, to flush the membranes. And nowadays, even the next step for the industry is to reuse the brine, which is a resource. So it goes back to what we discussed a few minutes ago. And to finalize our session about reuse of recycled water, where we went to this discussion again of using, to change the term and to discuss the policy that's so fragmented between countries that have different approaches on how to do it. And I think the problem is how they see water or recycled water in this process of integrated water resource management. The second point was there is a need to develop both policy and planning frameworks for governments at all levels for them to understand and how to apply, these new source of water in the process. And that those new frameworks not be focused on the reach to water quality issues that we discussed a few minutes ago, that water, they can have different purpose. And the last one is, again, coming from this work, this session, was to have this one water principle approach for us to see as recycled schemes as part of the water process, the hydrological cycle, not as part of waste. Thank you.
Thank you. And now for day 2 wrap-up, I'd like to invite Ms. Patricia Mejia Moreno, who's a FAO's agriculture and irrigation engineer and our critical link from Rome to Spain. Welcome.
Thank you. So I'm going to try to summarize day 2, which I think it's been very rich. At least personally, I have learned a lot. So in day 2, we have passed through, I think, the main issues of this symposium, which is technologies and innovation, policies and regulation, and financing. On technologies and innovation, we have different views from different stakeholders, from the academia, private sector, and the government. And we learned about a number of innovative and promising technologies, which its application in some cases is relatively new, but the research has started a long time ago. For instance, we learned about cloud seeding, rain enhancement, to get water from fog using vertical meshes. Also, we learned about a device that can extract water from the air. I think another important key message is that we need to learn from nature. So nature can also inspire some of the innovations. And one example is the biomimetic membranes that imitate the purifying power of mangroves and fish to extract fresh waters. So each of the technologies has positive and challenges in their implementations, and also need to be applied depending on the different contexts. We also learned that it's important to count with decision support tools because the environment is complex. We need to take into consideration the biophysical, the economic, the environmental, but also the social aspects. And these kind of tools can provide us good information for making decisions. So the key message is that we have good technologies, we have good operators, but without good policies, regulations, and institutional capacity, we cannot be able to upscale the technologies. So that brings us to the second session, which was devoted on policies and regulations. One of the key messages is that technologies and innovation need to go hand in hand with good policies, that policymakers and science should inform each other. We need also to understand the business model, to translate the needs into policies. For instance, we need to understand what are the environmental costs compared to the cost of inaction. We need to have a clear idea of the budgeting. We need also good communication among the different stakeholders, and also to consider the social and cultural acceptance and the perception of the society of the different technologies. It was also very interesting to have the perspective of the policy needs of the circular economy compared to the more traditional or linear economy. Circular economy may need more decentralized entities, smaller private sector players, but also give opportunities to sell multiple products and services. We also learned about the experiences of 2 countries on the use of non-conventional waters, Spain and Morocco. These are 2 countries that share the problem of suffering from huge water scarcity. So both countries are promoting the use of non-conventional waters. So in the case of Spain, it was very interesting to learn that reclaimed water is part of the Spanish Water Act, that is considered a public good, and that is also considered when planning investment as part of the hydrological cycle and as part of the water balance. We also learned about the farmers' perspective in Spain. It's not easy for farmers to uptake these new technologies. Sometimes the regulations are not clear, and they don't want to take the responsibility of being not only food producer, but also environmental managers. In Morocco, we learned about the ambitious investment plans, and we also learned that the government is subsidizing 100% of the investment. So that means that this is a huge amount of financial resources that are needed for these non-conventional waters. And this is why we need also a financing mechanism to promote the uptake of technologies. So how we can finance the use of non-conventional water? So we learned about water pricing. There are many ways to calculate the water price. This is not the difficult thing to calculate the water price. What is difficult is how to share and how to allocate the different part of the cost among the different stakeholders. We also learned about the PRIMA program. I think it's interesting for us because the next call for proposal is in December. So that also gives us information if we want to submit some projects related to the use of non-conventional water in Mediterranean countries. And we also got the perspective of the financial institutions, which of course are very important, such as IFAD and World Bank. So these two institutions are now targeting circular economy projects. They are focusing also on small-scale agriculture. Farmers should be at the center of these projects. They also stress the importance of having the contribution of different stakeholders, the private sector, the government, and donors. And one example is the blended financing, to decrease risk. And then finally, we have the perspective of the private sector. The private sector is willing to invest in these non-conventional waters. We learn about the trends on the use of the capacity of non-conventional water. So we know that in wastewater, Asia Pacific, and in particular China, is increasing the wastewater capacity, and desalination is more in the Middle East and the North Africa. The private sector also provide an example of financing strategy, which is the build, operate, transfer, in which the private sector finance the capital investment in exchange of operating rights. So these are some examples of financing strategies that can be used for the use of non-conventional waters. So I think I'm going to stop here, and I hope I provide a good summary of day 2. Thank you.
Thank you both for a very comprehensive recap. For the final word, I'd like to welcome our co-host MAPA, Ms. Isabel Bombal-Diaz, the Director General of Rural Development, Innovation, and Forestry, for concluding remarks. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Es para mí un verdadero honor poder
to close this symposium, especially after everything I have heard. It certainly sounds very, very interesting. So let me begin by saying thank you to the FAO. Thank you very much for deciding to meet here. Thank you, Casa de America, for having made us feel so very much at home at the Palacio de Linares. Thank you to the ghost, Raimunda, who was wonderful in her welcome. And I'm sure that the ghost also learned very much throughout the 2 days. And thank you very much to the team from the Ministry, the Undersecretariat, and my DG team at Infrastructure and at my support unit. Thank you very much for all of your endeavors. I hope that all of you not only learned, but felt very comfortable and take home fond memories. Thank you all. The fact is, I have heard very interesting issues discussed. The first conclusion, I think, is that indeed, as we heard from the Undersecretary, water is life. It is a public good. It is scarce. And a number of issues have been tackled, which we've just heard described, which are of tremendous interest for all of us and at a global scale. The use of water for persons, peace, sustainability, and achieving SDG objectives as per Agenda 2030, the change in mindset in order to do things a little bit differently. And this, by the way, is very much involved with innovation. Yesterday I was at a conference and I heard that innovation is an attitude. It's a mindset. I think that apart from many other tools which are necessary to innovate, this is absolutely true. And I think that we've got to think out of the box, innovate, look for solutions for problems that crop up now and which before perhaps didn't exist. And if they did, they weren't this noticeable. The use then of water via the circular economy, the use or the production of producing less waste, better leverage of resources, fostering new business models in water management. This is also very important. Technologies, innovation, how to learn from nature, as we heard from Patricia, take into account the environment. And in Spain, we are very familiar with this idea. Spain indeed is a Mediterranean country, and Spain knows that water is scarce and rainfall is distributed very unevenly throughout the year, increasingly so due to climate change. And so, because of this, and because we have a tendency to being very inquisitive and wanting to find solutions to the different problems or challenges that pop in front of us, we have become really world leaders in terms of managing this tremendously scarce resource, which is not to say that we're happy to sit and watch. No, things change, we are increasingly demanding, and we want, of course, to be increasingly sustainable and respectful vis-à-vis the environment. We know that climate change is a challenge, and we want to continue to be leaders in the production of foodstuffs, where apart from climate change, we face the further challenge of growing global populations, up to probably 9.7 billion for 2050. In Spain, apart from these two challenges, we have a third challenge which affects more territories in other parts of the world, but which is of special concern for us. It is the demographic challenge, depopulation. Our country is wonderful. Our country is very diverse. The nature, the geography, the people, everything is wonderful. But 85% of our land is home to only 20% of the population and shrinking, and especially with a tendency to aging. So we are very much aware of the fact that we need to do something about this. And so irrigation, as we said before, and as we discussed, if you remember, during the cocktail, this is an absolutely essential issue, because it's not only drinking water, which of course is very important for people to settle stably in any given region. We need to generate the kind of environment which will be attractive to younger persons. In Spain, irrigation is essential because value-added, good quality jobs and wealth that stays in the territory is often enough closely linked to agro-food industries in the country. And I repeat, irrigation, in other words, the availability of water, may well turn a region where people are leaving into a region where people flock to. And this is why it is very important for us. Apart from other policies to manage water, in the case of irrigation, we link it to farming activities. And I like to underscore this. We have to think about sustainable irrigation. I would like to remind you all that the government of Spain, is committed to sustainability and to respect, so that all policies include all of the different elements that are essential. This is sustainability. Without sustainability, we believe no policy will be effective or sustainable in the long run. And thus, in approximately 2 weeks' time, we're going to be seeing in Spain the commencement of the COP25. This for us is a challenge, again, very stimulating, very exciting, and an honor, because we're going to help Chile, which is undergoing grave difficulties, and we're delighted to be hosts to all of the visitors who will be participating. We know that the challenges are many. We know that the needs are stark. We, all of us, need to join forces and establish alliances if we are to leave for our children a planet with a future. And this is why when we talk about the use of non-conventional waters, we've heard about very interesting alternatives. It's been a very interesting 2-day symposium. I understand that the presentations have, all of them, not only the ones I was present at, have been outstanding. Congratulations to the speakers for having spent this time with us. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise. This is what we need if we, all of us, are to progress, individual and collective progress is what we aspire to. And of course, these policies are going to be increasingly important when we think about managing water. So new technologies are essential, as is new technologies and as is digitization. I know that yesterday interesting issues were discussed. Unfortunately, I was not present all day because I was the digitization of the Agro-Food Congress, which we hold every year. And this year we've seen 1,300 persons participating. These were persons from the agro-food sector. These were persons from the tech scenario and industry, from universities, from public administration, and investors also were present, because I think that what is needed is for new technologies to be available so that we can cooperate. Patricia talked about the need to finance, transform, and transfer this knowledge. We have definitely worked hard along these lines, because for us, another very important policy is to foster digitization and innovation, not only when managing water, but definitely, of course, very much so in that chapter as well. There are many different technologies, as you have heard, but it's not only technology. We also need sufficient resources to implement them. We need to know about them, because at the end of the day, people are the end users, and they need to have the digital clout in order to be able to make use of them as best as possible, which does not always happen. And this actually is one of the barriers, because we want technology to be implemented throughout the territory. We want to definitely manage our resources as efficiently as possible. So counseling, skilling are very important pillars for these policies that look for innovative transformation of the sector. We are carrying out a number of activities to achieve this objective. And the same can be said about the financial elements. You need to have the economic clout, of course, but when we think about the end user, we have lines that we're very proud of, because it has been difficult actually to get them on their feet. These are European initiatives. We're very proud to be able to say that we are the country in the European Union that has most backed these initiatives, and very successfully too. The implementation of innovation via joint cooperation of all of the different stakeholders, especially, of course, farmers and the scientific and technological world. We provide subsidies so that these persons cooperate and look for innovative solutions to specific problems, and they do it via what we call training of entities, operational groups. These persons participate in the groups, draft projects which are designed to give a response, and they are executed with public monies coming from the European Union and from the national kitty. We're proud of this, and in the Ategri Forum, which, as I say, was held in Zaragoza, in Spain,
de estos grupos operativos que ya
a lot about these groups which have come to the surface and which are responding to the needs that have to do with water and the scarce resources we have. We're talking about precision agriculture, so we need operational groups that task non-conventional sources of water, which are being launched, and the results are very interesting. Actually, some of the members of those operational groups I have seen in the list of participants were present here. So I dare say that it's going to be very interesting to be witness to how these projects evolve and what kind of specific responses they give. We've also launched a task force on precision agriculture which focuses on sustainability. In other words, producing more with less and with less of an environmental impact. And of course, everything that has to do with management and use of water and non-conventional sources of water. So in a nutshell, you've talked about all of these ideas today. I think it's essential. I think it's very interesting. And I believe that the fact that we have held an international symposium as the one that has been held says very much about the sensitivity of the organizers and of the participants who have spent time with us throughout these 2 days in order to be able to share knowledge as quickly and as broadly as possible, because the world needs it. And as to digitization, allow me, please, to just remind you that indeed, as our colleague who addresses issues related to youth, women, and poverty, it's essential not only for the farming sector to be more competitive, sustainable, and productive. We talked about ensuring that the living conditions are dignified, ensure that equal rights, justice, equity are guaranteed to urban and rural dwellers the world over. So attracting young people, women, and talent is one of our fundamental policies. We uphold it within the ministry via my DG and then other ministries as well, because these are umbrella policies, policies of state. And in order to achieve this, we need young people, we need women, and we need talent. It's essential, therefore, to have water, enough quality water, the right kind of water that these territories need. So, once again, thank you. Thank you very much for having decided to hold your very important international two-day event in Spain. I am sure that all of the knowledge that has been shared will be put to excellent use in all of our countries. We, tomorrow, are going to get to work. Again, thank you, FAO, for making this possible. We are deeply honored. I know that the weather wasn't perfect, especially yesterday, which I think says that you need to come back. Come back and enjoy a sunny Madrid, a sunny and beautiful Madrid. So we look forward to your return visit. Thank you very much and Godspeed.
Thank you all for the creative thinking. On behalf of FAO, we thank you for the promising observations you all shared in these 2 days. I hope next time when we meet, this will be called the conventional water resources use instead of non-conventional. So have a great return home, and thank you all, to all the speakers, to all the rapporteurs, to the facilitators and chairs, and also Casa de America technicians and the translators. A big hand and applause to you all. Thank you very much.